describe the plot of a movie for about 30 seconds because I think that it beautifully captures for me, or always has been a beautiful metaphor for Christ as King. And so the movie is this. It might sound strange at first, so just follow me for 20 seconds. Aliens come to Earth, but they don't actually visit Earth. They send plans to Earth for how to build a ship in which humans can come visit them. I don't know if they were lazy or didn't want to come to Earth or what, but they sent plans and said, here's how you build a ship that you can come travel light speed or whatever and visit us. And so the human scientists begin poring over the plans, and they were like, this technology is super advanced, but we have the materials, and this looks like it will actually work. So they begin building the spaceship. And they follow the plans, obviously, to a T, because this is a spaceship that they didn't know how to build on their own. So they're following the plans in great detail, and they build a ship. They make one little addition. The chair in which the person flying the ship is to be seated in was not bolted down to the ground, or to the ship. And so they decided, the human scientists said, you know what we need to do? We need to add in a couple of bolts just to be safe. Here, we're going to make that one little change to the ship's plans. Then what happens is the brave pilot gets in and begins hurtling through space at warp speed or whatever, and everything begins to shake violently. And it looks like everyone's afraid on Earth that the spaceship will explode, which was exactly what everyone feared. So as this is happening, as this travel is happening, everything is, again, just shaking violently until the two screws that the human people had added to the plans finally snap, and everything inside the ship goes calm and peaceful. The ship is still hurtling through light speed and everything, chaos outside. They're in space. It's still flying, etc. But inside the ship, it is like this perfect environment, and everything is still. And it turned out that the aliens knew exactly what they were talking about, and it didn't need those two bolts. This is, again, a great metaphor, I think, for Christ being the King of our lives, right? We hear a very important passage in the second reading. It says that God the Father delivered us from the power of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son. God the Father literally takes us from one place and puts us into the kingdom of His Son. And the way that His Son works, Christ desires to be the King of every single element of our lives. And I think we're all here, right? We're believers. We believe Jesus was the second person of the Trinity and born and rose again. We all believe that. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. The challenge for believers, though, those who already believe, is to constantly be asking ourselves, is Christ the King of my life, or is there 1%, some aspect of my life, that I don't trust Christ to be in charge of? Am I following the 99% of the plans, or am I following 100% of the plans? We have words for people that are not in charge of everything. We call them like governors or senators or whatever we want, whatever word besides king, right? This is not the celebration today of Christ the governor. A governor is in charge of some things but not others. A senator, a house congressman, woman, whatever. This is Christ the king, not Christ the governor, not Christ the senator, whatever word we want to use, right? Christ desires to be in charge of all things, not because He's an egomaniac, but because He knows that unless we follow the plan that Christ lays out for us 100%, then everything inside us will shake violently until we finally let go of the 1%. And we give everything over to Christ. And so we need to be, I think, people who are looking inward in our lives. Are there things that I'm hanging on to that I'm not trusting Christ to be in charge of? Right? Maybe it's this little corner of my life over here, or maybe it's how I'm going to live out my marriage, or how I'm going to use my sexuality, or how I'm going to devote myself to prayer. I'm going to do all these things, but I'm not going to care for the poor so much. or I'm not going to follow this particular teaching. I don't trust Christ there. Christ says, we believe as Catholics that Christ came to be the king because he knows that until we let go and allow him to be in charge, everything will shake violently in our lives. And we will experience the anxieties, the tensions, all the things that come along with not allowing Christ to be in charge of things in our life. And so I think what we need to be doing also that helps guide, I think, and shape how we go to others, right? We're asked to go to other people and invite them to be members of the kingdom too. To invite them to allow Christ to be the king of their lives as well. And you probably know many people at your school and back home who are in need of that, who experience those things. And I think here's the way that we do that. As we think about Christ the King, I think it's probably not best a lot of times to talk to people and necessarily always lead with Jesus. You're back home and it's Thanksgiving and you're like, hey, pass the cranberries and why aren't you a better Christian? Or pass the mashed potatoes. I heard you're not going to church. What's going on with that? Right? Haven't you heard about Jesus? I think the way that we do that is that I think we all know, not only in ourselves, but even more clearly, we know people who are experiencing the vibrating ship in their life, whose life seems to be just everything is breaking down and they're trying to keep it together, but they can't, and things are just seeming to start to fall apart, and there's stress and anxiety and no peace and no happiness and all these other things going on. And I think what we need to be doing is being a people who can listen and give those people an opportunity to just tell their story. To kind of talk to us, or for us maybe to even prompt that conversation about letting them sort of talk about the difficulties that they're living, the experiences that they're having, and the sufferings and all those sorts of things, the ways in which this ship is falling apart. And only in that moment then, after we've done that, we can then be, I think, a more authentic witness to say, you know what, I've experienced some of that in my life too. I may be even still experiencing some of that. But I have found that every time that I allow and follow these teachings that Christ lays out for us through His church, I begin to experience a calm and a peace that doesn't seem to make any sense. Right? It doesn't seem to, I'm not even sure why, but it is there. When I follow and allow Christ to be king, I experience a happiness, a peace, and a calm and a stillness despite all the things that are going on around me. Despite all the violence and all the wars and all the sufferings that are out there outside the ship, I still experience this peace and this calm, and I think you might enjoy that too. We know people and we experience that ourselves. One of the great teachers about the spiritual life in our Catholic faith is St. John of the Cross, and he had a doctrine, a way that his teachings are kind of summed up. It's called the nada doctrine, and he was Spanish. Nada meaning nothing. And what we mean by that, what he meant by that, is basically we need to be people who are constantly looking inside ourselves and asking and basically driving everything out that is not of Christ. Anything out, letting go of all the things that I'm trying to hang on to or hang in and try to control in my life. And there literally needs to be nothing in me that is not of God. If there's one little thing, everything will start to vibrate and shake violently. But if there's nothing that is not of God's plan in me, and if Christ truly is the King of my life, then I will experience that calm and that peace that God desires for us to have. So as we think about Christ the King, we pray that He may come and reign in our hearts, may come and reign in our world, and come and reign in the lives of all of our family and friends as well, who may be clinging on and following Christ 99%, but still hanging on to that 1%. May we be people who drive out all of those things which we think are ours and instead turn it all over, everything over, to Christ the King.